we're on. I don't know.
Did you hear about the...
No, carry on.
Are we on?
We're live.
We're live. Have you got a joke? We could do my fact of the day.
Go.
Did you know that a crocodile can't stick its tongue out?
There you go. No, well, we didn't.
You said you didn't know that.
We didn't. We know now.
Well, I know
You're
now,
not a crocodile, though, Chris. That's great. That's great podcast there.
There's no shopping, take a breath.
Well, have you got anything better to talk about?
A dog can't look at this guy.
Is who?
What?
Is that a joke?
Ever seen a dog look up?
Yeah.
Like that.
Again.
Great content. Great content.
You know what? I think actually the reason we've no pre-pod is that we're quite excited about the main subject. Do you know what I mean? I think we've just no banter because Chris, you've inspired.
And this is a serious subject.
It is a serious subject. I've no time for jokes. Are you joking? The planet's burning and we're talking about dogs looking up at the sky. They've no time for that.
And I didn't, after I read Chris's article, I told him it was good and I agreed with all, and I didn't think, so I don't even think I'm going to argue with him.
I was shocked at that.
No, well, okay, let's just
play the music.
Let's just get on with it. Welcome to the Good Roundup. Good is a brand consultancy in the United Kingdom. We get together for time to time to have a little chats about brand and what's going on with it and what's up with it and what's good with it and what's bad with it and all of that stuff. And I'm joined as ever by Mr. Chris Lumsden.
Afternoon.
And Ms. Julie Murdoch.
Hello.
Hello. So yeah, it's quite an exciting topic today. When I say exciting, I wouldn't be cancelling any plans. You know what I mean?
You've given it the big build-up.
I wouldn't be like avoiding going to the movies or anything. But I'm okay. It's something that's kind of near and dear to our heart. And it was inspired by many things, but an article that Chris wrote and that is tearing up LinkedIn with probably, I think, 10 likes.
As many as 10.
It's double figures, man. We're ripping up. We're screwing the algorithm up like daft.
Let's put the three listeners out there.
We're pure meta. So, Chris, what was the topic of the post?
It was called Sustainability, What Pending Legislation Means for Corporate Brands.
So, of course, you're staying in now, aren't you?
I mean, who's leaving now? I mean... But anyway, it was...
It doesn't sound like a classic, but it is a very interesting and current relevant topic that we're hearing and seeing lots about, aren't we?
Yeah, it's quite a long one, but it was written, I suppose, just thinking about all this stuff that's been in the news about COP, and then also looking at the work that we are doing with clients and inquiries we're getting and stuff. I think this is the sustainability aspect and issue is the biggest issue in branding right now, I think. You could argue it's the biggest issue in business,
yeah.
And it's a challenge, and how brands get to grips with the messaging around sustainability is really important.
So let's look at this as let's use the old rule of three to guide us through this podcast then. Let's start off, if you like that. So let's start off with where do we think we are just now as a consultancy that works with business to understand this kind of sustainability message and everything else? So where do you think we are at the moment?
I think we're at the beginning of it. I think, though, that we are slightly further ahead than some of the businesses who are considering this. I think we've thought through some of the implications, but there are certainly, I think, others that will become clear and clearer as we move down the path. I think generally we'll think of this as pre-COP26 and post-COP26 because there has been some, even though it didn't meet the temperature 1.5 degree thing that we were looking for, but there's been some steep targets set, and business is going to have to change. And trying to figure out what that means for them at their core is really important. And we can see it, we can feel it, we can see the issues across our client base right now.
And we've seen, and this is something we've seen clients struggle with, and some of our clients struggle with for a long time now, isn't it, in terms of how to, which is one of the things we'll talk about.
But they don't have an awful lot of time to get to grips with it. And I guess what this is about is there's a little hint at, I think that they're going to get, it's going to be a bit more stick and less carrot now. I think there's legislation coming. Mm-hmm. And then it's also our thoughts on how we can get tips on how
to deal with it. There's the operational side of what business will need to do, but then there's also the communication of it, which we're going to be more focused on
and
talking about.
when we kind of look at clients at the moment, and we've got a very broad spread of clients when they look at sustainability, and we've got clients like Interface who are continually topping, and continually topping charts of one of the most sustainable businesses in the world.
Yeah, the GlobeScan Sustainability Survey,
which is huge. And then we've got others who are not doing it, but when you compare Interface to anybody else, there just seems to be quite a number of ways to approach it.
Yeah, it's hard, right? I mean, it's hard even for Interface. They still struggle with how to fold this messaging and stuff into their marketing, whether that's product launches or brand stuff. It's difficult, and it's difficult for everyone.
And that's a business who does have sustainability at its core and always has had. So never mind the brands where maybe being treated with a little bit of a
greenwashing.
Well, yeah, or just broad claims around sustainability. But then actually, when you dig a little deeper, it's a bit of a veneer that means not very much, and how accountable those businesses will need to become.
It's on page 15 of the business plan with a picture of trees with some mist around it.
Nicely.
And a chart.
Yeah, and a panda.
A chart that's at core, sustainability is at core, and then we build out. Yeah. So in the second part of the three shall we unpack this thing about the legislation?
So the next, where we are and what's happening.
I saw that, so just before COP, I saw this piece on the BBC News website. It was about UK, and it was about the UK Treasury, who are looking to bring in some legislation around, defining what businesses' impact on the environment is. And I thought that was quite interesting. There's a document that they've published which is focused on the finance sector at the moment, but I think the article said, and the reading I've done, is that it seems like it's going to expand beyond that. But it's about a roadmap to greening finance, a roadmap to sustainable investing. And it just basically suggests that businesses are going to be held to account. They're using things called SDR, sustainability disclosure requirements, which sets out the angle and the territory that businesses are going to have to kind of publish their impacts around. And that's interesting because it creates focus. And the more interesting aspect, I think, was it introduces a thing called the green taxonomy. Now, this is for the UK at the moment, but it's interesting. It's interesting that where they're taking it. And what I expected to be really dull and hard to read was actually surprisingly accessible and interesting, which, as we know, is one of the issues around this subject matter. So it has 3 aims and 6 objectives, and we'll not get dragged into them, but the 6 objectives are worth a look because they're areas that are around climate change, mitigation, and circular economy and that kind of thing. But the thing I found really interesting in reading them was that there was no mention of the word carbon at all. And we were discussing, about whether that was deliberate or not. Yeah. Because what we do know is that word is really problematic and challenging.
And then all the associated terms with it as well around, but something we talked about, wasn't it? Carbon neutral, carbon positive, carbon negative, and the confusion around all of that.
100%. And this is, to your point, Stuart, about where we are in the journey. This is why I think we're at the beginning still. I think we're all at the beginning because the terminology is so loose and so kind of, we notice that some clients talk about carbon negative and some clients talk about carbon positive, and
there's no real kind of clear conventions, are there, in terms of how you talk about some of these things?
And if you actually talk to a consumer about it, let's not say a person, never mind a consumer. It's then carbon negative is actually a positive thing because it's about negative impact, and you think that it's just such a minefield of explanation, and you're just down the rabbit hole with it.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about, when we talked about recycling, and the confusion around that in a previous podcast, didn't we? And it's like, and this is tenfold, or has the opportunity to be tenfold when you're talking about layers of complexity around a subject matter. But like you say, consumers are going to be more and more holding businesses to account and looking to engage with brands that are, have a serious position on that. So that is credible.
And that's it. And, there's a recent study that said that consumers don't really know. There was a thing recently that said, I think it was nearly 70% of the public hadn't heard of or didn't know what carbon capture was. And sometimes you're party to discussions with clients and they talk about stuff in such grandiose terms and you're realizing no one's going to know what that means. You have to be careful with that terminology.
Which is one of the things we're going to talk about as well, in terms of our tips.
Yeah. But I think that this legislation is not fixed, and rightly it's not fixed yet. There's no timetable for it, but it's coming. I think it's naive to assume that it's not going to come. Okay. So the question then is, what does that mean? And I think, rightly, the legislation is focused on operations, businesses operations, but we should be asking what are the sort of second order brand impact point? What's going to happen from a brand point of view? What does that mean?
Yep.
And I think, and in my article, I think there's three things.
What is the first?
Well, the first is we just kind of touched on it. I think there's going to be a kind of a standardization and an introduction of common terms, which is going to happen. And arguably it's the most important thing, because if we're not all singing from a similar hymn sheet, then we're all screwed, because confusion will reign. Creating standardized terms allows people, consumers, people, you're right, Stuart, people in the street to compare and make compare products, competitors' products, and make purchase decisions. That's really important. I think the sooner that happens, the better. Again, I don't know how this is going to play out on a global scale versus a
UK or
US
European,
scale, but you would imagine that it's going to happen in the US.
There's
as well.
definitely been chat about when you're putting in your financial, when you're reporting every quarter in your financial status. Part of that will also be your climate sustainability status at the same time.
And it's whether that status and the terms that are used to define that status are going to be common.
International.
International. That's a big ask. Because the risk at the same time of it not being is that we just create a whole new logo soup of stuff that we create and brands create as proprietary marks and stuff. Again, confusion will reign. So I think that's really important. And I think that hopefully will happen. I think the second thing is, there's going to be what I say is a sort of confluence of messaging. So if you're setting criteria to report in certain areas, then business and brands will promote and spin messages in those areas as well. So you're going to end up creating kind of similar stories potentially. They're all going to sound the same. That's maybe good, because if they're reporting truthfully or realistically on their impacts, then maybe that's the end of greenwash, or the beginning of the end, which could be a thumbs up.
That'd be a good thing.
But again, the danger is how do you sound distinct? How do you stand out from the crowd if everyone's doing the same thing? I don't know. I'm guessing, but
it's a bit like I don't know if you know this, but I've been looking to buy a new telly.
You've
I've heard
mentioned
you've
it.
already bought it.
Well, I've heard that Brodie is
my
buying
son,
a new telly.
my son's buying a new telly. Don't tell my partner. I'm so glad she doesn't listen to this. But the point being is that the energy rating on the TVs now is that it's now not a distinctive thing to kind of go, this is what it is, because you now just look at it and you go, what is it? And it's the same everywhere.
Yeah, it's a hygiene factor, isn't it? And then that kind of convention.
You just kind of look at it and go, that's what it is, and you just glance at it and there's now a format to it that you understand, and I take it that's the point you're trying to make here. In theory, there should be a format that everybody would understand, but the challenge with that for brands is, how do you tell a distinctive story over something that becomes a graph?
And it does, I suppose it plays to the point that how important is this messaging to the consumer?
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But
And also your point around that kind of use of common terms. If brands try to use something that is common to differentiate, then, what are you going to call it something different? Just adds to that, confusion.
But your point's a good one. The rating, the energy rating on white goods or goods consumer. We all can see it in our mind's eye, can't we? The red, blue, green, So at least it's got a common graphic reference.
Yep.
That's a tick, but you're right. They all look the same now, and if they're all at a level, then it's no longer a differentiator.
Yeah.
It's a hygiene factor.
I'm sure there will be, even if there are certain elements of sustainability that become standardized in terms of how they're described in the metrics that, whether it's around carbon or whatever it is that businesses are using, there's still going to be plenty of scope to kind of build messaging out beyond that, isn't it? But it's what that kind of baseline standard, that benchmark is, that becomes the consumer expectation.
Absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
And then the third thing I think will happen, and I think to some extent we can see this is already happening, I think there's going to be a big catalyst. This is a big start, a catalyst for reviews. I think agencies and clients are going to review stuff. Full brand reviews, as we know, often and there needs to be quite a big sort of corporate trigger for that to happen. I think this is one such trigger. It's interesting that we were on a call this week with a potential new client, and it's in this subject area. I think they're trying to solve the problem by pushing it into a silo, when actually the issue is core to their brand and it probably needs taken deeper. But this is the point. I think it's the ideal time post COP26 and this race to net zero that we're seeing. That's politically, we talk about it, but businesses are looking for it too. The ideal time for brands to take it apart, have a look at how this works, how sustainability fits, put it all back together, get rid of some of the stuff they don't need, and be ready. and be ready for the race. I guess the only risk here, again, there's always a risk, is that your phrase, Stuart, is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which again is a thing. You need to retain what it is that makes you, but how do you crucially fold in that sustainability messaging on top? So yeah, I think it's going to be a great trigger.
So we've covered where we've been, which has been a bit all over the place with sustainability. Some people digging deep, some people just skimming over it. We're now, where we are at the moment is the proposed legislation, which will make a lot of things clearer, more defined. You'll be able to, more accountable. You'll be able to, as a person, to be able to judge one company against another to see how they're doing. But when you look to the future, Chris, you've got 7 tips to kind of help you on the start of this process.
This is based on our knowledge and the work that we've done thus far, isn't it? But yeah, I think there are 7 tips to how to get on board with this. So firstly, I think it's one that is probably the most obvious one, but it's often these obvious ones that aren't, when you're in it, you don't see it. But the point is, you have to accept that this is a journey. No matter who you are, the story doesn't come out fully formed. So you're in it for the long haul, and actually it's more credible, arguably, in a consumer or in a human's eyes, to see somebody trying and saying, look, we're moving from here to here, and we're only at stage 1. The aim is obviously to get to stage 10 or whatever. Yeah. But small incremental changes are actually the way forward here. It's not one and done. And quite a lot of the marketing, the people that we've been involved with in this really want to, rightly, I understand why, they want to come out with look what we've done, rather than here's where we want to go and these are the steps we're taking.
Proposing to get there, yeah.
So this overclaim and hype stuff, I think, is all sold kind of historically. It's where we were, but I don't think it's where we're going to be. Mm-hmm. It's a journey.
And I think that, and we talked about this the other day, that obviously, Patagonia, I think is a good example of a brand that embraces that really well. There was an article I read the other week about just talking about the journey that they're on and recognising that they're part of the problem, despite the fact that I think they were number 2, weren't they, on that same report, that Globespan, whatever it was, 2021 sustainability leaders. And they still, even a brand who, similar to Interface, in that with something like sustainability at its core, still talks about this as a journey that they're on. So those that are slightly newer to the party, that have bigger changes to make, it's not a negative to be talking about those small incremental gains in the meantime, shorter term.
Number 2 is just quite simply review your core brand elements and think about how your commitments in the sustainability arena fit with what you already have. And the question we've always got is, does it have to be an explicit call out, or can it be a bit more nuanced? Can it be implied across other values? So, values like responsibility and care and things like that, you can wrap sustainability up into that. You don't have to call it out explicitly. I use an example here on this Allbirds brand, which is interesting. It went public the other week, I think, for I don't know what it is, $9 billion or something crazy, but it's core to them, right? Sustainability is built in. It's a sustainability shoe company, and they actually, back to the labels and the marks, they build in the carbon footprint of each shoe, and they've got that on a label. So obviously that's really, really key and core to them. But not all businesses are the same that way. So it doesn't need to be as explicit. And again, we're always trying to talk people back from the edge of being that explicit. It's just about, thinking it through.
And making it relevant for you. And I think that's a really important point, because like you say, I think, and that's from a consumer point of view, and this is something we've talked about in the past, in that it's one of a number of things that brands are going to need to talk about, but building that into their core messaging is going to be really important, because product is still number 1. And actually, even there are, of course, lots of people who care a huge amounts about the brands that they choose to buy, and based on and whether that how sustainable those companies are. And there's also a lot of people that don't, and that actually will look for a few boxes to be checked, but ultimately will still buy Nike over Allbirds because they care about the product more. And I think that's where that sort of credibility thing is important.
Well, that links perfectly with point number 3, the fact that we do say this a lot to clients. Remember, and it's linked. Remember, you're not a sustainability company. So be careful how hard you lean into it. And there is a lot of overlap here, but sometimes the sustainability messaging contain the core message of what you are in the product, and that our view is they should really be, it should be complementary rather than definitive. And this is the sense of where I'd written a previous piece, like sustainability is ruining branding, because this is what's happening. They're coming in hot to it, and it's just then you get confused and the messaging comes out wrong and it just feels wrong. So it's Jules's point that understanding where it plays for your customer is really important. Is it a tiebreaker or is it fundamental?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the point I was going to lead on for Julie's is two things. First of all, there is a lot of noise and a lot of people talking about what's going on out there. And so it's easy to go that's top
the
of
only
the
thing that
that's the top of the priority list. So therefore, we must jump on that. But at the same time, you're making a product to solve a problem, and all birds have got to be good shoes. Because if you're lowering your carbon footprint, but every time you go out into a Glasgow street, your feet are wet.
Yeah.
I don't give a toss, and that's not. So your product has got to solve that problem. But as a second point, when you've got lots of products that can help solve that problem, it may be a differentiator to go which one's actually better for the planet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think I've used this example before when I was buying my rain jacket, and Patagonia was one and Lululemon was another. Lululemon are not even nearly as sustainable, and they don't have the same sustainability credentials as a company like Patagonia does. Ultimately, I preferred the jacket, so I bought the Lululemon one, and it's that kind of, you say, for some people, sustainability will be absolutely front and center and will be the kind of the driver of choice. For others, it'll be does it tick enough boxes to make me feel comfortable with buying it? But ultimately, I'm going to pick brand A over brand B because I prefer it.
Is brand B doing enough as opposed to brand A? And that's going to be. And
is it doing enough to? Is it doing enough to ease my conscience?
Can I sleep at night?
And therefore, So, and that's the thing as well, isn't it? It's for again, it's sustainability is really important until for some it becomes too much of an inconvenience, and then it's and I think that's the reality of human nature, isn't it?
It's understanding where you fit,
in that.
Absolutely.
Grand tapestry.
It's going to be interesting to see how this comes to life and how it helps nudge people into making not just better decisions for themselves, but for the planet.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
That was good.
Profound. Let's just stop there.
That's where I think companies like Small are interesting as well, because they're a subscription-based model for household cleaning products. So they're also very, very sustainable. So they have their sustainability credits are good. They've got fully recyclable packaging, etc. And so they talk about sustainability, but they also talk about the fact that their products are great and it's really convenient because you can just get them sent out to you once a month based on how often your washing machine's on or how often you run your dishwasher. So it's that kind of, like you say, it's that hierarchy of messaging and where it all plays. So it's a core part of their brand, but it also ticks all the other boxes. And I think that kind of, like you say, how you buy and how that opportunity to kind of influence how people buy and how people behave will be an interesting thing to see unfold.
Number 4, Stuart, is be careful about the clarity of the language that you use. And this is linked
we like the brand language.
Yeah, we do,
don't we?
Linked to the stuff in that legislation that's been thought about. So the bottom line is this subject matter is scientific and complicated very, very quickly. So be careful, what you do. And it's about resisting the temptation to use jargon, challenging terminology, and pushing up what I call our semantic barriers around, about trying to show off. And I think that this is really, really important. It's everywhere in business. I mean, even this week, I was talking about just the level of sort of corporate constipation there is around this stuff, the bullshit, about the language and they can talk for days and write paper after paper, but what does it actually mean? What does it net down to? So it's about that study, using terms that people understand, using simple terms, everyday terms. And it's back to that thing. It's not new, this. It's like benefit over features. It's like, when we talk about, how many times do we mention Apple? But, when they talk about processors and technical things, they talk about the benefit it brings to the customer first. Yep. Think about that. And let's not use the jargon.
Yep.
No comment, no pushback.
I mean,
Amen.
You're preaching to the converted here,
But I think, the only thing I was going to add there was just the kind of your point earlier, really, about making it meaningful. And I think that's where those small wins have a really important part to play in terms of talking about the small gains as well as the big brand claims that, where you want to be in 10 years. Talk about what you're going to do over the next 12 months and then make it meaningful for people. So it's a bit more easy to. I
think people inside businesses are yearning for that as well, because they're looking at the papers and the stuff that comes out, and they go, I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds great. What does it mean?
And that's one thing we haven't really talked about here, but one thing we do talk about a lot in terms of the internal communication of brand and its values. And I think that will also be a really important thing that businesses need to think about in terms of potential from a recruitment point of view. You know, people that want to work with a business that takes sustainability seriously. So how are you taking those claims, not only talking to your consumer, but also to your internal teams about what that means? Like we talk about from a core brand perspective, what does it mean for the people that live it day to day? You know, and that's it's just an extension of the same point we make when we're talking about, you know, brand generally. But
And that, to be honest, that links to the fifth point, which is about, I say, the sustainability and innovation are best friends. So I think what I mean by that is too often sustainability lives in a silo. And it's kind of a section on a website, and it's lots of claims, and it's pictures of trees, and it's what we're doing. Whereas if you link it to the products or the things that you're doing, which inevitably, you are going to be innovative if you're looking to in the race to net zero and bringing products that tick those boxes, then you have a platform from which to talk about these things from an internal point of view and an external point of view. You know, you can talk about the impact you're making. And the other thing that occurred to me in writing this was that, you know, innovation, as we said before, is such a badly defined term in the corporate world for us, and it has been in the last decade. But if you link it to the sustainability aspect and aspiration, it does create a context and a purpose to be exploited.
yeah,
So you're killing two birds with one stone.
Like it. I don't like innovation as a word, but
No, I know
think
you
it's
particularly struggle with it.
how about it as a value, Stuart? Because
I fucking hate it as a value. It's just fucking nonsense. It's lazy ball.
Yes, it is.
But no, I think your point is right about tying those two things together, making the connection, and then it makes it a lot more meaningful.
And and when you do the exercise of taking the brand apart, you get a sense of how they can all come back together. I mean, it is quite abstracted. I get that, but you know, that's the job. You need to find a way of landing the plane somewhere.
And what's point number 6?
Is, you know, it's a kind of marketing basic. Understand your customer's journey. This is linked to the point about what are your customers' expectations about sustainability? When and where do they expect you to talk about it? When is it annoying and when is it valuable?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, it's, what's the phrase about, if you've got a sustainability hammer, every
nail's
needs smacked with it, something like that. Yeah. But it's much more
slick guys.
yeah, talking about mixing metaphors. But I think that the point is that be smart, understand where you fit and when it's relevant, and when people want to hear about it. And once you do know that, and too much of this is speculated from within a boardroom as well.
Yeah.
I don't think enough brands actually go out and find this stuff out, because it's quite easy to find out, and you'll be surprised at how. Actually, I would be, with my cynical hat on, you'd be surprised at actually how much consumers probably don't really care at the moment. But you can then tailor messaging appropriately, and crucially, that ties back to being able to create the right content at the right time.
Yeah, the question isn't if they care, it's when they care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, because as somebody who's going to buy a telly, it's not going to be top of. I want to make sure it's got a good picture and it can plug into my console and I can do that. Now, later on down the line, when does it matter? And that's, you know, and then you've possibly got, depending on what it is, if they care, because, you know, if you're looking to buy 20 elastic bands, do you need a sustainability message on it? Maybe you do. Maybe you do, but
maybe need to be biodegradable rubber bands.
Maybe. But then you have to understand at what point does that thought enter into the buying
where does
process?
that play?
Yeah.
And that's the point again about understanding, appreciating that any buying journey is not linear, you know, and understanding at what points as a brand you have the opportunity to educate, reassure, influence, whatever that may be, and then again defining and shaping your messaging to fit with that, rather than just banging everybody over the head with a sustainability drum. Again, not a metaphor.
It's not the saying,
totally
is it?
not a saying.
I think maybe we'll put
I
it in
usually.
notes.
No,
It's because you mucked up the one about the hammers and the
nails.
There's nothing I like better than getting battered over the head with a drum,
a sustainability
drum, while knocking nails in with my sustainability hammer.
DIY.
It's a Friday night in.
Indeed.
Smashing this.
We're nearly there. So number 7, last tip. And again, we talk, you know, in many aspects of branding, this is true. Engage a wide group of people. Everybody's going to have a view and is going to want to have a say. I think So it's advisable to consult widely across the business. I think too many of these initiatives in branding that we've worked on, we've seen not fail, but fall short maybe of the impact that they could have had, is because the consultation wasn't broad or deep enough. And back to your point, Jules, about if it doesn't work internally, people don't feel it internally.
Game's a bogey, man.
Correct. It's not going to work.
Well, I actually think, sorry, Stuart.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say, I actually, perhaps controversially, think this is potentially the most important one, because we talked about it again from a brand point. We've talked about this before, the importance of engaging marketing, sales, product. Sustainability is going to could quite easily be something that can imagine entire department. There are already entire departments and teams, but if this stuff is conjured up internally in a silo that exists only within a sustainability team, as soon as it goes out to the wider business, it's going to come a cropper pretty quickly. So that kind of early engagement and
sense of shared ownership.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were the 7.
Should we want a quick recap on what?
Yeah. So firstly, it's a journey. It's not one and done. 2, review the brand elements, take them apart, have a look at them and see where it fits. 3, you're not a sustainability company, unless of course you are, and then in which case crack on. 4, clarity of language is really important. 5, try and link sustainability and innovation. You'll get a great platform to tell stories. 6, understand where your customer fits and what your customer wants from you in terms of sustainability in the journey. And then 7, engage stakeholders widely across the business.
Boom.
And I think, in closing, I think my perspective on this is where I triggered the article from. I think it is the biggest issue in branding at the moment. We're not saying it's easy, it's challenging. I think, though, that in most cases, sustainability is likely to be complementary to the main product or service. And it's, how we can help clients manage that from a brand and a messaging point of view. It's not going to be the differentiator it was. We're in this new era of transparency. Legislation is coming, so we better get ready. And I do think that in the next 10 years, we are in this race. There is going to be a kind of Darwinian effect on brands that try to resist or game it. So it's going to really be interesting to see who wins and loses and what changes in that race. And actually how the branding aspect evolves, because I don't think we've seen all the pitfalls and challenges yet. But
I think, like you say, it's early days, isn't it?
Early days. So there we are.
Nice one. Enjoyed that.
Yeah. I feel I've talked an awful lot on this one.
No, but it's because it's your article. That's right that you do. And to be honest, you sound so intelligent.
You do. You're very lucky. Right.
Very intelligent and a wee
How do we close it out then, Stuart?
I cut
all
that.
So
cut all that out.
We just cut all that out. And I go,
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you.